and metaphors. So with a simile, we are comparing two things that are usually not a lot alike, by using the words like or as. We have a couple of examples, like someone is happy as a clown, or they're like two peas in a pod, or cute as a puppy. All right, so remember that a simile is comparing two things using like or as. Our next kind of piece of figurative language is a metaphor. So a metaphor is very similar to a simile. It's a lot like a simile. But with a metaphor, we are still comparing two things. But instead of using like or as, we are saying that saying that one thing is another thing. So we're saying that one thing is another. So for example, if someone gets very sunburned, we might say he is a lobster. We don't really mean that he is an actual lobster. We mean that he looks like a lobster because his skin is so red because he got sunburned. We could say her heart was gold. That's a metaphor. And sadness is a black hole. That's another metaphor. So that's what a simile and a metaphor are. So let's take a look at our guided practice. So in our example, it says our class is a buzzing beehive today. This is a metaphor, and it means that our class was especially busy. We know it's a metaphor because we see that word is. Our next piece of guided practice is the sentence, the assembly was like watching grass grow. Well, we know that when we see like or as, we are talking about a simile. So we know that this has to be a simile. And this simile means that not very much happened at the assembly. Number 2, his hands were as cold as ice. So we're comparing his hands to ice. We see as, so we know it has to be a simile. And this simile means that his hands were extremely cold. Number 3, the kitten is a fluffy cloud. This is comparing two things, the kitten and the fluffy cloud, by saying that one of them is another. So we know it's a metaphor. And this metaphor means that the kitten is furry and white. And our last example, I'm as hungry as a bear. Well, we see that as, and we know that anything with like or as, or when we're comparing two things using like or as, we have a simile. And this simile means that I'm really hungry. Very quickly, I want to take a look at the independent practice. So I want to go over the different things that you're being asked to do here. So the first part is to read each sentence and then circle the two words that are being compared. In our first example, we see Aram, he slept like a log. Our second task is to determine, is it a simile or is it a metaphor? Since we used like in this sentence, it's a simile. And the last task is to write down the meaning of the simile or the metaphor. So in our example, Aram slept like a log, it means that Aram slept deeply. So do your best. The literal meaning is kind of up to your interpretation. Very quickly, let me give you your secret word of the day. That word today is mouse. So make sure that you copy that down on your paper. And if you run into any problems or any questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to help.